Welcome to this WiseR training video. In this session we're going to teach you how calendars work in Microsoft Project. What we'll learn in this session is how to view the existing calendars, then how you can create exceptions to model things like holidays. Next we'll move on and show you how you can edit the working hours for a calendar, including how to change some important settings to make sure that your tasks work properly. And then finally we'll show you how you can copy calendars into the global template so that you can share them between projects. So let's get started. When you create a new file in Microsoft Project, there are two main things you want to do to begin with. Firstly, you want to choose when the project starts or ends, and the second thing you want to do is to set up its calendars. So let me show you how to do both those two things. First of all, head to the Project tab in the ribbon up at the top here, and then find the option for Project Information. And on this dialog box, there are several settings that allow you to control when the project starts and ends and what calendar it uses. So to begin with, I'm going to choose a start date for my project. By default, it sets the date to today's date, which hopefully you wouldn't want to plan your project on the day it had to start as well. So usually you'd like to choose a date sometime in the future. So let me choose next Monday. Now this represents now the absolute starting point for my project. No tasks, nothing at all can happen before this date. Sometimes you'll want to plan projects to an end date as well, rather than to a start date. So if you did want to do that, I'd have to select the project finish date option from this dialog box, from this drop down list here. And then I'm allowed to select a finish date rather than a start date. So if I was to do this, I can select a date quite far in the future, and that would mean that no tasks could happen after that date. I'm going to revert back to using a start date for this particular project. So I'm going to choose project start date, and Monday the 5th of March 2012 is absolutely fine. Now the only other option I want to select at this point on this dialog box is which calendar I'm going to use. By default it's set to the standard calendar, but there are always two other choices by default when you first begin projects. There is a 24-hour calendar and a night shift calendar, as well as a standard one. The standard calendar is the one that I'm going to use in this particular file. Now that sets for me a default for everything else that I create. Every view, every task, every resource, by default, will try to use the standard calendar. The only problem I have at this point is that all I know is its name. I don't know anything about what hours it works, what its working days and non-working days are. So that's the next step. Once you've selected a calendar for the project, the next step is to work out what hours that calendar uses. So to do that, head to the Project tab of the ribbon and find the Change Working Time option. When you click on it, you'll find this dialog box. At the top, I can choose from the drop-down list the calendar that I want to view. I'm going to stick with the standard calendar for now because that's the one that I want to modify, or at least look at. And then the rest of the dialog box gives me the details for that particular calendar. I can click on any of the days in the grid here, and that will tell me on the right hand side what the working times are for that calendar. So any Monday through Friday on the standard calendar works 8 till 12 and 1 until 5. It's a standard 8-hour working day. Saturdays and Sundays are non-working days. And that's the default pattern or the default schedule for the standard calendar. But what if I happen to find that some days don't meet that pattern? That's where exceptions come in. So the next step is to create some exceptions to model things like bank holidays, standard national holidays, and so on. Now if you find that some days don't fall into the standard pattern of working times for the calendar you've selected, you can create exceptions to model things like holidays, and I'm going to do that for some of the standard UK bank holidays in this year. I need to move into a different month first of all to select the appropriate date. So I'm going to do that by clicking on this down arrow here. It's tempting to click and drag the slider bar to move around, but be careful about doing that. The calendar ranges all the way back from 1984 all the way through to 2049 in Project. So when you drag the slider, it moves a long way very quickly. It's safer and easier just to click the drop arrows to move one month at a time. So once I've got through to April 2012, I can click on the day that I want to create an exception for. So this Friday, 6th of April, is going to be Good Friday in the UK. So here we go, I'm going to type in the exceptions list down here, Good Friday, and hit enter. Now that creates Good Friday and sets Good Friday, the Friday the 6th, to be a non-working day. Simple as that. I can do the same for the 9th of April, which is Easter Monday. Let me do that one quickly. And hit enter, and now Easter Monday, 9th of April, is a non-working day. And then a couple more. I'm going to head into June. The 4th is the Spring Bank Holiday, so I'm going to call that Spring Bank Holiday, or Joliday even. There we go, holiday. And then, because here in the UK we're kind of unable to let go of our past, and we still think that the idea of a hereditary monarchy is a good concept, we've got the Queen's Diamond Jubilee on the 5th. So there we go, Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Not spelled correctly. I can edit that by clicking back on the same box and then editing the text and hitting enter again. If you find that you've created an exception that you didn't mean to, or you've perhaps set it to be the wrong date, there's a couple of things you can do. I can select the exception name in the list and either click the delete button to remove it completely, or I can select different start dates and end dates for that exception. But that's the way basic, straightforward exceptions work. The next one I'm going to create, though, is going to recur on a regular basis. Christmas Day always happens on the 25th of December and is always a non-working day here in the UK. So in order to make that work, I'm going to scroll first of all the way through to December 2012. Select the 25th, and then I'm going to create an exception for it by clicking in the Exceptions tab and calling this Christmas Day. Now if my project carries on for such a long time that I fall onto Christmas Day next year and perhaps the year after, then I don't want to have to go through this calendar creating the same exception year after year after year. So instead I'm going to set this Christmas Day exception to be a recurring exception. To do that, select the exception in the list and head to the Details tab. When you click the button, it will give you a dialog box for setting up a pattern for this particular exception. So I know that this particular exception occurs yearly, and it's on an exact date. It's on the 25th of December. I'm going to start it in this year, 2012, and I'm going to let it run for, let's say, 5 years. I don't think my project is going to last longer than 5 years. So set the number there to 5. If I click OK, it's not easy to spot from this dialog box at this point, but if I scroll down here through to December 2013, I can find that 25th of December is an exception there as well. So that's how you set up basic exceptions to model holidays that either happen once or happen on a regular basis. So now that I've made a few changes to the standard calendar, I'd like to see what effect that has on the actual project. So to accept all the changes, I'm going to click the OK button at the bottom of the dialog box, and that'll take me back to the main project view. Now it's not immediately obvious that anything's changed, but if I scroll through using this arrow at the bottom right hand corner to April, and in particular the 6th and the 9th, where I'd set up my exception days, you can clearly see I've got 2 extra grey shaded non-working days. If I can quickly show you what happens now if I create a new task, which I'm going to call inventively new task, I'm going to set it to start on the 5th of April, which is a Thursday. So that's the day immediately before the bank holidays. Now I'm going to quickly change the duration of this task to 2 days. And hopefully what you'll see is that this task can only happen on working days. That's a standard rule for working time in project. Tasks can only happen during working time. So it takes up all of Thursday, but then it can't work Friday, Saturday, Sunday or Monday. So the following day, the second day of the task, occurs on Tuesday, the 10th of April. So that's the way that your calendar changes affect tasks in the project. If you set non-working times, tasks will not be allowed to happen at those times. The next step is to work out how to create new calendars that model completely different working times, perhaps for different teams of people or for different individual people. So let's say you have some teams of people or even individual people in your organisation who work on completely different working patterns than everybody else. You can't modify the standard calendar or one single calendar to model every individual person's working hours. So for that reason, you'd want to create extra custom calendars. So we're going to do that now to model a team of people who perhaps have a slightly unusual working pattern. Their working week begins on a Friday and runs through until Tuesday, but they have Wednesdays and Thursdays off work. So to do that, head to the Project tab on the ribbon and choose Change Working Time. Rather than modifying an existing calendar, we're going to create a new one. And we can do that by clicking this button. You can give your new calendar a name. So let's see, I'm going to call mine Late Week, which isn't very inventive, I know, but there we go. And then I've got two choices. I can either create a new base calendar. What that would do is it would create a blank version of the standard calendar, so it wouldn't have any of these bank holidays. But I want to create a copy of the standard calendar as it is at the moment, which will give me all of the standard bank holidays again. So if I click OK, really the only change that I'll see is that I get the name of the calendar at the top, and I'll be able to select that calendar now in any list that allows me to select calendars. So the next step now is to modify the pattern of working time for this week or for this calendar, and I'm not going to do that by using exceptions. Exceptions are literally for exceptions to the standard rule of working time. What I want to do is modify the actual pattern of working time completely. So to do that, I'm going to use the Work Weeks tab. There's a default work week which I can modify by clicking the Details button. And here I get to modify the pattern of working time for any day of the week. So Monday and Tuesday are fine as they are. Those are the standard working days using the standard working hours. Wednesday and Thursday I need to modify though. Those are the 2 days that do not work in that week. So I want to set those days to be non-working time. There they go, the working hours from this little grid here now disappear. Friday is fine as it is, but I need to do the opposite now for Saturday and Sunday. These need to become working days. Now one way to do this is I could select Saturday and Sunday by clicking and dragging, and I could choose this option here, set days to these specific working times, and then type in all of the shift patterns, the hours of work. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to set that one back to what it was before. A quick way to cheat with this is if I select Friday first, it populates the box with these working hours. I can then click and drag downwards to select Saturday and Sunday as well, and say set days to these specific working times. And that fills in the same hours for Saturdays and Sundays without me having to type anything, which is a neat way to cheat. So if I click OK now, I can see that my calendar shows me Mondays and Tuesdays working, Wednesdays, Thursdays non-working, Friday, Saturday, Sunday working. All I need to do now is click OK. And now I have that calendar available to affect tasks, resources, and even the overall project should I wish. At the moment it hasn't affected anything at all because I haven't used that calendar anywhere. So I'd quickly like to show you how you can assign a calendar to a task. So I'm going to double click the task that I created earlier, and that displays the task information dialog box. I've headed to the Advanced tab here, and what I'm going to do on this Advanced tab is select the calendar. At the moment it says None, which means that the task will use the same calendar that the project uses, if you remember from way back when we selected the standard calendar for the project. Here I'm going to override that decision by assigning the Late Week calendar to this task. Now watch what happens to the task itself when I click the OK button. The days that it happens on completely changes according to the working hours of the new calendar. It's not very easy to see at this point because the calendar view is still showing me the working hours for the original standard calendar. So what I'm going to do now is modify which calendar is viewed on this calendar view. I can do that by right-clicking and then choosing the option called Non-Working Time. The option for the calendar is over here in this drop-down list. So if I click on the list, find my Late Week calendar, I get a little preview of that down at the bottom here. But when I click OK, you should see now why that task is happening on that Saturday and Sunday, because those are the next 2 available days of working time after the start date that I've chosen for the task. Hopefully from this you can already see how everything is affected by calendars, and that's absolutely true. It's a continuing theme for Microsoft Project. Everything you do in terms of tasks and resources is all affected by the calendar that's assigned to them. So we've made a few changes to an existing calendar, and we've also created a brand new calendar from scratch. But all the changes we've made so far have been quite simple. We've either changed a working day into a non-working day, or vice versa. I'd like to talk to you about something a bit more complicated now, how you change the actual individual working hours for each day. And to do that, I've come into a brand new blank project. So I'm going to head to the project menu and choose Change Working Time. I'm going to modify the working hours of the standard calendar. So head to the Work Weeks tab, select Default and choose Details. I'd like to modify Monday through Friday, so I can click and drag to select those. And I want to set these working hours to specific times. So rather than starting at 8 AM as the standard calendar does, I'm going to start at 9 AM instead. And I'm also going to have a shorter lunch break as well. I'm going to have that down to half an hour. So what we have now is a standard 7.5 hour working day. If I click OK and click OK again, I can now start creating new tasks. I'll give them inventive names again, so there we go. There's a task. A task of a 1-day duration. I just want to make a quick point that that a 1-day duration by default is the same as an 8-hour duration. So I can quickly show you that the concept of 1 day and 8 hours is exactly the same by default to project. Can you see the weird thing that's happened with these 2 tasks though? I've asked them to start on Thursday, but they don't appear to be starting at the start of Thursday. They're part of the way through the day. And they're also ending on Friday, rather than when they should be ending, which is on Thursday. All of these weird things that are happening are down to a specific set of settings that, annoyingly, Project doesn't tell you about. You have to know that they're there. So let me show you what these settings are and how to get to them. Head back to the project menu and choose Change Working Time again. It doesn't matter what calendar you have selected here. All you need to do is click the Options button down at the bottom, and that will display the Project Options dialog box. Here are the settings I was talking about on the Schedule tab. The options for the start and end time of any particular day, and the number of hours per day that are scheduled. So I'm going to make a couple of modifications here. Change this to 9, which is the new start time based on my standard calendar. I'm going to change the hours per day setting to 7.5, and that must mean that the hours per week is also 37.5 as well. Once I've changed those settings, I can click OK. And just to remind you what I'm trying to change here, you can see that it's already modified in the background. Let me get rid of this dialog box if I click OK. Can you see that these tasks are now starting at the start of Thursday as they should, but annoyingly they're still ending on Friday. Now the reason for that is that the original durations you had for a task stay fixed when you change any of those settings. So I entered the value of 1 day. It's now changed to 1.07 days. The reason for that is that my new tasks, when I enter a duration of 1 day, this is now the same as saying not 8 hours, but 7.5 hours. So hopefully you can see from here that these tasks are starting at the beginning of Thursday and ending at the end of Thursday, lasting for 1 day. The simplest thing I can do with these tasks is change their values again. If I enter that as 1 day and this is 7.5h for hours, those will fall in line as well. But how annoying is setting? The really annoying thing is that Project doesn't tell you that those settings are there. But you must remember to do this if you change the duration of a day on a calendar. Just to give you one quick extra clue as to how to get to that dialog box, you can also head to the File menu and choose Options. Brings the same dialog box up, and you can then click on the Schedule tab. There's the set of settings, and you want to make sure that these match your calendar. The fantastic thing, I think, is that There's a little hint here about what happens if you change these settings here. You should consider matching the project calendar. The annoying thing is you'd never know that that suggestion was there unless you came to this dialog box first. But now you know how it works. So now that you've seen how to modify existing calendars and create new calendars, and a few of the extra important settings, there's one last annoying thing that you need to know. When you create or modify a calendar, it only affects the project that you're working in. So here in this particular project, I've got a nice long list of some extra custom calendars. But if I cancel this dialog box and then create a brand new project, I can head to the File menu and choose New and then click Create. If I head to the Change Working Time dialog box, I'll find that those calendars don't exist. That's quite annoying. So the last step is to show you how you can copy a calendar into the global template to make it available to all your future projects. So I'm going to cancel out of this dialog box again. I'm going to close down this brand new project and head back to the one that contains all of my new calendars. To copy these calendars into the global template, head to the File menu and on the Info tab, look for something called the Organizer. If I click that button, this organizer gives me access to the global template that project bases every new project file on. And there's lots of customizable elements of project that I can copy into the organizer, the global template. What I'm interested in specifically though are the calendars. So here we go, click the Calendars tab. The panel on the left gives me access to the items contained in the global Microsoft project template. And on the right hand side, I can see a list of calendars that exist in the file that I'm working on. So all I need to do is to copy across the calendars that I want to appear in any new project, like so. A quick note that if I copied the standard calendar across into the global template, it would overwrite the existing one, but that would make it then include all of the holidays, all of the exceptions that I created earlier on as well. So sometimes that's worthwhile doing. If I do that for the standard calendar, it's going to ask me if I wanted to rename it because it already exists. So if I rename it, it will give it a different name. If I click yes, it will simply overwrite it. Here I'm going to click no. There's no button to click on to confirm. You have to click OK. The changes you make take effect immediately. So if I close down that Organizer dialog box and head back into the normal view of my project, if I now create another brand new blank project, I can head to the File menu and choose a New and choose Create. I'll now see if I head to the Project menu and Change Working Time that every project I create now contains my extra calendars. So hopefully that's going to save you a lot of time and effort in setting up the same calendars again and again and again. If you've enjoyed this training video, you can find many more online training resources at www.wiseowl.co.uk.